Alright, so we'll continue. Hilchos Taaruvot, Siman Kuf Yud. We have one more Siman to go after this. But this actually may be the most difficult Siman of all. The various concepts, the various shittas. So, review is always good. So what we'll do is, before we go deeper into Sif Vav, just want to cover 2 or 3 points from the last shiurim, in the previous Seifim, of Basar in Makulin, Basar in the store. As the Shach explains, that in the name of the Bach, that the din of the Mechaber to take Basar from the Makulin, Mikan ve'elach, that it's a chumrah, afilu bechaticha she'enan ruyos liskaber, right? In other words, we found out that treif meat was distributed into the store, and now we have a taruvos in the store, which is a different metzias than a taruvos of chanuyos, of stores, which we do not know where we bought it from. Here we know we bought from the store. The problem is that we thought we were buying kosher meat, and it could be we did, but there was a delivery of non-kosher meat. So the halacha is clear that what was purchased before, kol ma shelokhu me'makulin kodim shenimtzas hatreifa, is fine. Why? Because the suffix is not in the kavua. Right now we have a sort of kavua. The suffix is not in the kavua. The suffix was, we bought it before there was a bichlal, any idea that there was a problem over here. So when is the suffix being noilad? La'achar shepirish, after we've purchased it, after we've taken the meat home, that is when we have our doubts. And that makes a big difference. It's no longer a suffix in the kavua, which poses a problem. There's no bitul. Here it's a suffix at the time that it's pirish. And since the roiv is kosher, I'm talking about that, nevertheless, obviously that the roiv of the meat in the store is kosher, so you have a taruvos and you have water. But from now on, we have to be machmir. And when he says about being machmir, he says also b'afilu chatichu she'eino ruy liskaber al din of a chumrah, which he explains why it is more of an issue in the store than it is at home. What I may not have clarified well enough is that even though here it says that it's a chumrah, that's only because we know that it's coming from the store. Let's say we don't know in which store it is, in which store the treifas are. That, in other words, treifas has been distributed in the various stores, and we don't know right now in which stores they have been distributed. So we don't know in which store there's an Isser Kavua. Then it's not Mechumra, then it's Medina, that I cannot buy any meat from any one of those stores. In other words, if I do not know, this is as the Shach explains, if I do not know where the Tarfus is, I know it's in one of the stores, then I cannot buy Medina, not Mechumra. I cannot buy any from any of those butchers until the problem is resolved. When I have a suffix in this one makulin, in this one store, it's still a suffix, it's still a problem, mikanu lehabo, but we said that it's only a chumrah legabe de chatichos that are not royally iskabed. They're small pieces, they're mixed, it's a regular taruvos with the rest of the meat. But and that's because I know the tarfus has come here, but I have a taruvos. If I don't know to which store it came, then it's me'ikar adin, I cannot buy from any of the stores any piece of, even something which is not royal. It wouldn't be just a chumrah. It would be meikar adin.
So why is it?
That
I would think
resembles more of a din of kavua. Sure.
In which store it was delivered, that one store would be a more likely source.
Yeah.
And since it's a more likely source of trades,
right,
I would be more strict with it.
Yeah,
Whereas if I don't know which store it was delivered, so that was my naive understanding.
You're right, but that's the chiddush of kavua. Right.
What
that's the difference of a chiddush of kavua versus a taruvos in the chanus itself, in the store itself, or the basar. There's a technical difference as to where the suffix is. Is a suffix in the chanuyos? Is a suffix in the situation now? Because when was it noila to begin with? In other words, in the first part of the halacha, we have a suffix that was noilad after it was pirish, so we don't have a problem with that, right? You see that you understand the technical difference between that which was purchased before and that which is being purchased in the future,
that's not my problem.
Right? Now, there's also another technical difference versus whether there is a vadai isur in this store, and I apply the rule.
The point is, vadai in this store.
In this store,
is
right.
vadai in this
In this store, right.
Store
So
is vadai.
therefore I apply another criteria. I apply the criteria of Taaruvos here,
Right.
which is the regular Taaruvos here,
Yes.
except for Ruis Liskabed, right?
Right.
And Me'ikar Adin it should be mutter. Me'ikar Adin it should be mutter. It is.
Unless it's a regular chabad.
Right. Me'ikar Adin should be mutter because of the din of Taaruvos. It's making all the meat in the freezer. What do I do now? So if it's not Ruis Liskabed, it's not a problem. Just it's a chumrah. But if I'm told treifa meat was distributed to one of the stores, we don't know which store the truck delivered it to, then the Shach explains that it's me'ikar adin. It's not a chumrah, it's me'ikar adin.
And that is because, why different? What applies? I'll tell you why I'm asking.
Right.
Because right now I have a suffix, and I would think that whenever I have a suffix,
Right.
I need to deal with this as stringently if it's a deoraisa, as though I knew with certainty that the worst case scenario applies.
Yeah, but we don't do it that way, that the worst case scenario applies.
So in this case, the worst case scenario would be, I know this is the store it was
Right,
delivered.
but we have a
So al chumra, I wouldn't be able to buy anything. But you're telling me even worse. You're telling me al safek,
right.
this is even a more chumridik than if it wasn't by
That's right. That's what's interesting.
I'm not sure if it was delivered to this. Yes, I'm asking. What
because
is
of
this
because of the din of kavua. From now on, we're starting from scratch, right? Remember, it's mikano lehabo. We're starting now from scratch to purchase. So it's not a taruvos of basar in one particular place, which follows a different criteria of halacha of taruvos of bitul baroid. Here it's a din of kavua. It's a brand new din of kavua. That now there's tarfus in a store. It's like the Eser Chanuyos.
So let me ask you.
Right.
If I know where the tarfus is,
right.
and from now on I know, why isn't this a din of? If I know for sure it's in this store, why isn't this now a new achidush a din of kavua? I know it's in this store. Why is it? Why if I don't know it's in?
This is the one store.
Yes.
Right. It's not a real din kavua like where you have 10 stores and you don't know from which one you bought. Okay. Here you have pieces of meat that all got mixed up together. It's a different, the circumstances are different. It's, as opposed to a kavua in a store. Once we say kavua, we say that whole store is treif. There's no din of taruvas, there's no din of bitul between 1 and 10 stores. It's a whole different mahalach, right? A whole different way of looking.
I thought kavua was dependent on where I took possession of the treif. Was it in the store itself, or was it when it was outside of the store?
Well, that's versus if it's kavur or whether it's pirish.
Right.
Exactly.
So with respect to where you're saying it's a mixture of meat and store, with respect to kavua, this is no less kavua than when I don't know which stores.
Yeah, that's not real kavua. Remember, there's a situation that we call a kavua de rabbanon, when there's a suffix later on, and there's a chiluk between whether I know from which store I bought. I just don't know where the tarfus is. Remember that one?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, there's various scenarios of whether it's a real kavua or it's a kavua de rabbanon or not. The real kavua is when we know we know that there's an iser vadai in a store, in that particular store. We just don't know if we bought from that store or not. That's the chiddush of kavua.
So in order for it to be a kavua, it's not enough that there isn't a survivor in the store. I also do not know if I bought.
Yeah.
Then it's a kavua. It also requires my uncertainty as to whether I bought there. That's what makes kavua.
Sure.
I don't know. If I'm certain I bought there, it's not kavua.
No, if I'm certain that I bought there,
it's not kavua.
Then obviously, it's a problem.
No, it's a problem always. Different types of problems.
Right.
Obviously. And which type of problem?
It's the same kind of a problem. That's the chidush is that even if I don't know which store I bought from.
Okay, wait. So if I have a store...
Kol shekain, if I know the store that I bought from, then obviously it's also because what does kavua say? It's been there all the time. This is a treif store.
No, but we're talking about the delivery
right.
that
We're not saying
calling that kavua.
We're not saying bitul anymore. We don't apply the din of bitul to that store.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
We were talking about a case where the delivery and it was an extraordinary delivery. Normally the store treif. There was mistakes there.
Right.
And we were calling that, if I don't know which store, kavua. You see, we're dealing with a case where it's not always treif.
Yeah. No, it is.
And we're still calling it kavua. Oh, this store always receives treif?
No, remember, that I may not have clarified enough. In typical example of kavua, you have one store selling nevelas.
Always.
Always.
But in our case, with the Shach is commenting,
right.
It's an exceptional
It's an exceptional situation.
And still he calls it kavua.
And still he calls it a form of
kavua. So you see, he's not making kavua contingent on the permanence of the permanence,
right.
So apparently
he's saying that mikanu lehabo, I would not have permission to buy from any store. Mikanu lehabo, because it's a form of kavua. Now, it's not. I grant you that it's not the exact same din of kavua, but we do not have the same heter that we have in the store where things are mixed. And I make the assumption, of course, that it's batel b'roi. I don't have that luxury of saying,
I understand you don't have the luxury. I was trying to understand what is the factor that causes the. I have to admit, I don't quite understand.
No. Sure. The difference is that there is a chiluk between when the suffix was born, when I was aware of the problem, and if I'm aware of the problem right now, lechatchila, I don't have permission, lechatchila, to just go ahead and buy.
Only we call it one time of chumrah.
Right.
Regarding those pieces that are not
No, that's the halacha in the Mechaber.
And one time we call it the halacha.
The halacha meikar hadin, he says.
So we make a distinction between meikar hadin and as a chumrah.
Right. Meikar hadin.
The distinction is whether I know which store it is or I don't.
Right. It has more of a din of kavua. That's what he says. He explains he has more of a din of kavua.
And that's what I'm trying to understand. I don't understand.
Yeah. It's not. In other words, the suffix is no longer in a particular store where you are. The suffix is legaber the rest of them, and therefore I cannot make that assumption that call the parish. I'm going to take right now from a store, and I'm going to assume that I'm taking from the roiv. You can do that when you have the meat in front of you. You say it's batel. You cannot do that with stores,
the meat
right? There's no bittul in the stores. That's another. If you want to look at it that way,
if the Isser was present in the store where I'm buying, it would be misbatel.
Right, but
I don't know that.
But stores are not misbatel.
Not saying that stores are misbatel.
That's the easy way of looking at it.
But then it would still be a chumrah.
No, it's not a chumrah. It's meikar din. That's the din of kavua. Whether it's a rice or davan is a different point. But that's the din of kavua. The Isser is kavua in a particular place. I don't say that the stores are batel, but let's go on. Yeah, that's pretty much the chiluk. So sometimes it's hard to understand, so I try to differentiate between stores versus a chalant here. The chalant here you have a taruvos. In the stores you don't have this kind of.
Except for in our case we had stores both cases. In the chumrah case and in the non-chumrah case we're talking about where I know which store it is. I say I can't buy the non
from now on, right?
From now on as a chumrah,
right? Because there's a difference. There's no real din kavua here. In the other stores, there's a din of kavua. That's the only difference.
Would it make a difference in supermarket and 10 separate booths by some you have them, they're all in one place, but they're all under one roof, but they're a separate owner.
Sure, I believe that would be the same if they were under. It's a good question. If they were all under one roof, they would concept in separate booths, separate ownership. That would be the same kind of situation. Yeah, where only one sells treif. And which one was it? And by the way, you have that in several supermarkets that sell. There's a corner designated for kosher food, kosher meat, and that's why it's so important when you're buying kashers, especially meat and chicken, that it has the seal and that it has the cover, so that you don't run into a problem of Basar sheni salam min ha'ain, which is the essence of this problem of meat that has not been seen, could have come from the kosher or non-kosher source. All right.
And if I understand you correctly, so what you're saying is that once I'm not certain which I have a problem of I don't know which store, rather than a problem of I don't know which store.
That's correct.
And that introduced a different halacha.
That's right. That's all.
What I'd like to then emphasize is it's interesting that this different halacha leads to a situation. Uncertainty as to which store received them forces me to act in a more stringent way.
That's correct.
Than the uncertainty which of the meats the store received.
That's correct.
Is the one.
That's correct. Yeah.
Which will be the worst case scenario.
Right. And perhaps as we go into the next seif, some of these concepts will be a little bit made a little bit clearer as to how the din of kavua works. Perhaps we'll see above. Because it is a chiddush. Remember, it is the whole din of kavua is a chiddush. Okay. Right.
You said that store.
Right.
It's only if it's rural established. Right? That's significant.
In that one store?
No.
In the butcher store?
The food, whatever the meat is something that would.
If it's a chaticha ruya l'skabed, then from now on, this butcher had a delivery done this morning, and I can't buy the chaticha ruya liskabed at Mikar Din because it's right.
Where hot dogs in it.
Yeah.
Or anything. Famous stories.
Right.
Not fit.
No, we still have klalim as to what is really considered chatucha ruya liskabed or not.
Okay.
And I don't know if you would serve your guest just one hot dog.
FDR did it, the famous thing.
Yeah.
Or was it I can't remember.
What was it? Yeah.
Hot dogs at that Hyde Park, New York.
Yeah.
Right.
Royalty. Yeah. What you could say about that is that that Bishul Akum applies to it because it's oil shulchan shel melochim. Hot dogs is a food that maybe the English kings have at their table. So concerning the din of oil al shulchan shel melochim by Bishul Akum, you may have a point. They had this question about tortillas in Mexico. The president of Mexico eats tortillas, So every Mexican eats one. So is that that's the condition of Bishul Akum, one of the conditions. Does it oile al shulchan shel? And the answer is it's not oile al shulchan shel, because even though it may be by the kings and the presidents, it's not necessarily the most prestigious food item that would be served as a main course.
As a matter of fact, most people that don't know by heart all the food were served on all the occasions where he arrived in the United States. That one meal they remember.
Yeah. All right. It was something new.
Because it was unusual for one reason.
Yeah. Okay. In Sif Vav, even though we've covered just the basics of it, the Gemara in Zvachim about animals, Balachayim, that have gotten mixed up, and one of those animals in this mixture of live animals, we're no longer talking about meat, dead animals, we're talking about live animals. One of the animals is Asr. Even though the Gemara there discusses Kochim, Korbanas, or things that are Asr for other reasons, not necessarily kashrus, the same halacha applies to all kinds of situations where this may arise, where one animal of the bunch of the group is Asr. And since these are live animals, we say they're choshuv. Entire live animals are choshuv, they're important. And they're like any other things that are choshuv, they're not batul, afilu be'elef. So that was the halacha, that balakam shadvar machashuvim, anything, shenisarvu beheter, shenam betem afilu be'elef. Mechaber said afilu pirish, in pirish echad min haroiv, even if one was pirish min haroiv, acha shenoida taruvos. Also, after the taruvos is known as also. But the Mechaber says, what I said just now is only in condition that he did this intentionally. Okay, if it happens by itself, one of the animals get out, so we say called a porish, meruba porish, famous, right, concept that we've covered already, that there may not be bittul in this taruvas, but there is a din of called a porish. One came out of the bunch, it somehow ran away, right, on its own, and here the condition was that it was not b'miskaven, then it's shori. So the Ramah seems to agree too, for the most part. So just a little bit of background. The reason why you cannot lechatchila take from the taruvos and say that this is from the roiv, because this is a kavua here. The Isser here in this group is kavua. Okay? And what's the din of kavua? Kemechzel mechze dame, as we've covered. It's like a 50-50. You don't really have roiv. Now, this is not really the din deraisa. Why not? Why is it not the din deraisa? There's no din kavua over here if the Isser is not nikar b'mekoymai. The Isser, we don't know which one the Isser is, right? It's not like a taruvos. Okay, here it's not seen. It's part of the whole group. And Balechayim are also batul b'roiv according to the din of Torah. So me'ikar adin min din Torah, we really don't have a problem over here. Now, what is explained there in the Gemara also is that if somehow we can achieve that the animals would move away from where they originally were stuck by bringing them together somehow very, very tight corner, which would force them to move, if we can achieve that, we would be mevatel the din of kavua. Kavua means that they're in one group together in a particular location, but somehow, if we can do that, if we can bring about a change of location for the animals, that they would all start scattering or moving one by one or all together, it would be mevatel the din kavua. The only thing is that the maskan of the Gemara says that you cannot do that. Why? Because we're goizer that you should not come to intentionally take from the kavua. If you allow this, you eventually may come to take lechatchila from the kavua. Okay, things are not so clear because obviously we have a lot of machloikis amongst the Rishonim as to what exactly was meant by the Gemara. What can you do and what can you not do, and why you can't do what you can't do. What is the reason for the Gzera? When does the Gzera apply? So you have various interpretations. You have Rashi that simply says that an individual can be goyrem for them to move out of the Taaruvos, and after he has accomplished them moving from where they were to their new location, a second step would involve him taking one from the Roiv, from the Taaruvos. In other words, there's two steps. One is get them away from what they were, which cancels out the Kavua. After you've accomplished that, the Gemara is asking in the Lechatchila, then it will be supposedly okay for me to grab one of that bunch, and there would be no Kavua. It would be Parish Meruba. So that's the way Rashi learns Pshat in the Gemara. Well, of course, there's a Gzera, but that's the way he learns Pshat and what the Ikar Din would be. Tosfos says that what is involved is that you're causing one to move after another, and that in itself does not make it mutar just by itself. It would have to be that you do not see it happening. I'm trying to not go into every single detail of Tosfos. It's quite extensive there. But briefly, he says that what's involved or what would enable it for me to be able to use it or to take it would be that I did not actually see this whole thing happening. Otherwise, if I see it happening before me, it doesn't make any difference. According to Tosfos, the way Tosfos learns, it would still be a form of kavua. Just because they moved one after another doesn't really make that much of a difference. It's that I don't see it happening makes a difference. Rashba, which is what the Mechaber quotes over here, the Rashba says that we're talking about that he causes them to move. And if through his causation of the animals moving, he accomplishes that they all moved, all nispazu, they're all scattered, you can say, call the Parish Meruba Parish later on. And therefore, even if this were to happen in front of us, even if I were to see it, it's okay. Why? Because once you say nispazru, once you say the animals are scattered, you don't have the din of kavua anymore. The kavua is gone. Very simple, he says. That's not a problem. The suffix is not in the Mokum HaKaviyis. The suffix is later on. I took an animal from this bunch that's scattered, and it's not from the kavua. And we say I probably took it from the roiv. The roiv is mutter.
So whether you did it yourself to get them?
If you did it what?
With a grub. You shot a gun into the air so they all ran.
Oh, no, that would be very similar, yeah.
Or you send the animal.
Actually, one of the Meforshim says that a gun might be a good idea. He doesn't say gun, he says throwing something at them, because that you can do from a distance where you don't see what happens. In other words, they may move, they may not move. So it's an interesting point that you raised. It may be an advantage for him to do that, because you can be at a distance, and from the fright, right, they can start scattering. Yeah, so that's mentioned. The only problem is when the animals are in one place and one is pushed in front of us, then there could be a problem. But if nispazru, somehow they scattered, then the tviyas is bottled, then we have no problem. Okay, that's the ikar machlekes over here in how you learn the Gemara. As far as the gzera of why, we want to know the maskana. Maskana, the Gemara says you can't do it anyway. And this becomes a little interesting, because the Rabbeinu Tam, as we will see, one of the Balatoises, appears to make a chiluk between kochim and other things. He says what the Gemara over there said was aser through gzera is only because it's kochim over there. You know, it has nothing to do with the halacha in ordinary situations of kashrus. Over there, the Gemara had its own concerns of what will happen if you allow this animal that is from kochim that got mixed in with other animals. It had its own concerns. So, which is an interesting chiluk that the Taz also discusses over here. But based on that, there would not be this problem with this gzera. The chorah should not be in other areas of halacha. So that's what you see various kinds of machlokes. So I'm going to just go through several of the shitas. Of course, what's the gzera? We're saying the gzera is shema yikach min kavua. You may eventually come and take from the kavua. That's all it says. Does that apply everywhere, all times? It just says shema yikach min kavua. So the Pashup Pshat, the way we learn like Rashi and the Rashba, the Gemara's Pshat is that they were goyzer that through one's involvement by causing them to move, you eventually, if you allow this lechatchila, you may come to actually grab or take from the kavua. So that's how the Rashba learns. In other words, that the individual actually has kavana to take, and therefore he shoots a gun, like you said, or does something to get all the animals moved away. However, what would be the din if, according to the Rashba, if he did not do anything? He just came by, didn't do anything, didn't lift a hand, didn't yell, and they on their own moved. If they on their own moved, that's what Mechaber says, Pirish Memela. Now he says Pirish Memela on one, but the Rashba says if the whole group scattered just by themselves, I didn't do anything to scatter them, there should be no problem, there should be no gzera on that. So the gzera is only when I do something, shooting a gun or doing something for them to scatter, then I can understand the gzera. So this is according to the Rashba. The Rashba says it's mutter, right? It's only mutter lechatchila when they scattered by themselves. But if I'm involved, it's mutter meikar adin. Yes, maybe, but there's a gzera. That's the maskan of the Gemara. So how does he learn the gzera? The gzera is only when there's somebody intentionally causing them to move. Even though they're moving, but he's causing it. So therefore, we're goyzer. But if they on their own moved, there should be no problem. Because moving on their own, what will that do? The kvias, the kavua, would cease to exist. And then you can say, call the porish. So in other words, whether it's nispazru, all of them in front of us, or if it's pirish, one after another, not in front of us, there's no gzera. That's how he says it. So it's interesting. He says nispazru even in front of us, whereas pirish, one after another, that has to be shelo befanim, but there's no gzera. Toises and the Rosh say that this gzera is said in every instant, even if they went on their own. Even in this parsha me'atzmon, there was no intervention of any kind of a human being, and therefore that's the gzera. It will be asur. So the Rosh asks a question on this shita, his own shita. Then why is it mutter if meat was found in the hands of a goy in a city? Now we know that one butcher store sells treif. Remember that case when we spoke about kavua, that if it's found in the hands of a goy, that's called pirish. It's not that you took from one of the stores and you don't remember from which store you took. Now you have a problem. You may have bought the meat from a non-Jewish store. It's kavua, it's asur. But if the goy has it in his hands, and most of the stores are kosher, only one store is treif, it's okay. Why should it be okay? Why don't we make a gzera there? Why should the gzera be there? If you allow this meat, you may come to take from the non-kosher store. So the Rosh says it's very simple. Over there, we don't make such a gzera. Are we suspicious that somebody's going to intentionally buy from a non-kosher store? So there, it's not shaykh to make a gzera. When the iser, in some ways, is nikar. It's nikar where it is. It's one store. So is somebody going to intentionally go there? No. But here, we are concerned that somebody may intentionally do that. In other words, kavua, which is not nikar, we don't really know which animal it is. We can be goyzer that he may take from where he's not supposed to take. But are we going to be goyzer there? No, I don't think anybody's going to intentionally buy from a non-kosher store. Okay, Rabbeinu Tam, he's the one that I mentioned on Tuesday, that brings the other two cases, very interesting cases, that you have in a herd of sheep or goat, you have a wolf entered, and as we say in Hebrew, hishtolel. No, he went crazy, right? He bit or he clawed. That's the problem. We don't know what he did, because in Hilchas Treifas there is a difference if an animal was clawed or if he was bitten. The claw with the nail could puncture, could make a big problem. It all depends, of course, on the animal. A lion, of course, can be a problem in almost just about any kind of animals, whether you own cattle or goats or sheep. If you have cattle and you have a lone wolf, it may not, according to some, it may not be a problem. Depending on the size of the animal, goats and sheep are susceptible to, for example, in Southern California, to mountain lions, to coyotes too, possibly. We see that all the time. So in the Halacha, when you learn treifus, you will see that it's not just lions or wolf. There are other animals of prey. There's birds of prey. And as Ilan mentioned, with the poison, in Hilchos treifus, actually the poison is mentioned with, I believe it's with a hawk, with one of the birds of prey, that when it sticks its claw into, when it sticks its claw into another bird, a pigeon, whatever it can handle, right? It can't handle an ox, a bull, but it can, right? Then it's releasing a poison, it says, and that poison, we said it could be a bacteria or something. And so it's a combination of the puncture and the poison that kills the animal. What's interesting is that in some countries, like in Mongolia, they use certain eagles, the bigger eagles, to hunt wolf. It's a smaller wolf. In Spain, I've actually seen videos that there are some eagles, the largest eagles in the world, that are able to knock a goat off a cliff. They push them down, and some of them have even been filmed picking one up, the smaller ones, and taking it to their nest. A goat, an eagle carrying a goat, or pushing him off the cliff so it falls and dies, and then it goes and eats the cadaver. So look at these birds of prey, what they can do. To smaller animals, of course, to the very smaller animals. So that's why in the Halachot of Taaruvot, it discusses depending on which animal was involved and what did he do. Was it a bite with the teeth, or was it a claw? And with the claw, well, was there a nail? Did you find it? Did you inspect the animal or not? Obviously, if you can inspect all the animals inside out, you're never going to have a problem. Because how are you going to tell if an animal was affected? By certain signs of certain areas of the animal turning red internally. You can see it. It was injured. Right.
Were they shechted?
If you do a full bedika, you don't have a problem. Exactly. Yeah. So that's in other words. But sometimes bedika doesn't help for certain things. I remember seeing something about the bedika on a veshet, on the food pipe. It's very hard to tell sometimes. In other words, some things can be seen through bedika, maybe some things cannot be seen. And here we have a problem. As Rabbi Natan brings down the case of a wolf entering a herd. The doras echad mehem, and it did claw one of the animals, one of the sheep, and we don't know which one. That if you took a sheep from the bunch, from the taruvos, you would say call the porish meruba porish. We allow it there. And of course, they asked the question from this Gemara over here. But what I mean, in this Gemara, we were geyser that lechatchila you don't do it, right? So how does Rabbi Tam allow it in the case of the herd of animals where the wolf entered? So Tosfos in the Rosh explains that apparently Rabbi Tam learned Pshat in the Gemara in Zvachim that over there it's only Xer in Kotchim, not in Chulin, not in regular animals. There was the Xer that we just discussed before in Zvachim about not taking, or you may eventually take from the Kabur, therefore don't do it, don't take from the mixture, don't allow Kol the Porish, is only by Kotchim. That's how they learn Pshat Rabbi Natan, that he's mechalik, even though they don't agree that there should be such a chiluk, such a difference, but it very possibly could be that that's the way Rabbi Natan holds, and that is why by the Eder with the wolf, he says no problem, go ahead and take one of the sheep and say call the porish meruba porish. There's another question I've been a time from Avodah Zarah. By Avodah Zarah, it's interesting. There's another case of where a tabas, a ring of Avodah Zarah, which you're not allowed to have any benefit, got mixed in with a whole bunch of other rings, all the jewelry. So what's the halacha? The whole thing is asur, right? You can't benefit from it. There's no bitul. But what about if a tabas came out from the bunch? Do we say call the porish meruba porish? Right? So over there, the same question arises. We see that you're not allowed to do it. Why over there would it be asur? why would be goizer over there that you cannot do it, that you cannot take it? So they say a very interesting chiluk. It could be Rabbeinu Tam holds Balei Chaim, animals tend to scatter on their own anyway. They tend to move. They're alive. So therefore we allow it. The whole kviyas will be batal anyway on its own, possibly. With objects like rings, they don't move. So the gzeir over there can apply. In other words, by Avodah Zarah, we can see why it would be usher versus the case of animals where they would move on their own. Remember, moving on their own means that at some point the whole kviyas would be batal. Interesting, very nice. I like that the differentiation.
It doesn't make a difference when it will move for.
Yeah.
Taaruvot, certain things ultimately we know after mutter.
Right.
Right. So here it doesn't matter when, but we have no idea when they'll move their own.
Right.
But they will move.
Right. The thing is, by the case of the Eider, by the case of the herd of cattle, of sheep, it eventually, you have a sfeika of sorts. Right? You're taking one. The reason why it's lenient, the mechaber, for example, I guess we can mention it at this point, because the Tur, even though it's a little bit out of order, but because we're speaking about Rabbeinu Tam anyway, the Tur does bring the two cases. He brings the case of Oisav Es Benoi. Remember the case of Oisav Es Benoi? Where you slaughtered the mother animal, the mother cow. You're not allowed to slaughter in the same day the calf, right? Oisav Es Benoi. Now, the calf of this mother that you slaughtered got mixed in with other calves. Now what are you going to do? So over there, the halacha is, and the Tur brings this down, and this is in Hilcha, in the Siman Tezayin, that you can allow kol de porish. And it seems to be a contradiction to what the Tur is writing in our Siman in Taaruvot, that you cannot allow this kind of solution, just take from the roiv, right? Intentionally. But in Oisav Es Benoi, he allowed for it. What's interesting is that he also, like Rabbeinu Tam, he brings the case, the Mechaber does not bring the case, of a drusa. In other words, an animal that became usher because it's a suffix drusa. It was clawed, and it could have, we don't know for sure how it was clawed, but it's a suffix drusa. And over there, he also allows it, the Tur does allow it, to remove it from the roiv. Except for the last two, by the way. He does it. When we start removing one after another, the last two are always going to remain usher, according at least to some of the poskim, if that's the way it's done, one by one, because the last two that remain do not have a roiv. They're two, right? So they're not bottle. So the Beis Yosef actually asked this question on the Tur, that from here, Siman, it's mashma we're goizer, and not over there. So how do we explain it? The Pri Megadim actually gives a teretz on this, that he holds that it's possible that by Oisav Es Benoi at least, we're not goizer, because it's going to be mutter the following day anyway. Today it's a problem. You can't slaughter the calf today, but you may slaughter it tomorrow. So therefore, there's no reason to be goizer so much on that case as opposed to the other cases.
We don't take the lenient because we have a remedy.
Yeah. Okay, so that was the Tur. That was a little bit related to this Rabbeinu Tam that would hold that it's mutter by the herd that was clawed by a wolf. You would allow for kol de porish. Okay, the Pischei Tshuva, there's an important Pischei Tshuva that I saw in the name. It brings down the Radvaz, even though we don't paskin like Rabbeinu Tam, right? We are, at least a lot of poskim are machmir. That's only besafik iser. And I'm sorry, that in the case of safik iser, where you have a safik rusa, whether it was b'shein or b'yad, and it got mixed up, that you're allowed to remove them and say called the porish. We are making like Rabbeinu Tam, we're not goizer. Why? Because it's like a sfeika. Think about it. What do you have here? You have a suffix. If this animal was clawed, and it was clawed in a way that would cause an injury that would make it treif, right? That's one suffix. That's a second suffix. I'm taking one out of this group. Even if you say it was clawed in a bad way, who says it's this animal that I'm taking? Maybe this one is completely clean, completely kosher. So it's a form of sfeika, right? A double sfeika, which we're discussing later on when and how you can say a sfeika. That's a big area of discussion. But when you do have a good double suffix, it makes the whole thing a little bit more lenient. So we can accept Rabbeinu Tam psak by an animal that clawed and other animals when we have a suffix as to how it was clawed, which animal was clawed, that you could be mafresh one from the majority and say called the porish meruba porish. And this is without bdika. Now, obviously, once you boidik, even if you have a real suffix, if you boidik it, you find, oh, it didn't do anything. It barely scratched the survey. Then it's okay. I mean, if you can check the animal, then of course you'll. But here it's without even checking. You can be mafresh from the roiv. Why? Because it's a sveka. The ran is, I didn't see it inside. It's a ran in Chulin, but somebody brings him down that he's cholik on the whole gzer, and he says that even b'miskaven, there's no isur even b'miskaven. That fishu b'miskaven, there was no gzera. What the Gemara says also lekovshoy is if it's porish befoneinu. It has some. In other words, only if it happens before us. And that's the mekor of the din. If a chatichu was porish befoneinu, there's no heter. In other words, when things happen in front of us, that's when they pose a problem. If it's not befoneinu, it's never an issue. That's the Ran. I didn't see it inside, but he appears to have his own derech here. Okay, Ledina, according to the din, we see that the Mechaber here goes like the Rashba, very clearly, that it's only also when you are actually mafresh beyadayim, not with, if they're porish by themselves. The Ramah doesn't seem to argue on this. The Shach and Kaz, however, bring the poskim that say that it's also, even if it went on its own, like the Rosh. What do we do lemaisa lemaisa? The Minchas Yaakov brings down that we follow, we're machmir, even if it's it went on its own, porish on its own, unless it's a hefsed meruba. We go like the Shulchan Aruch. So this can happen. I mean, this is not one of those halachas that happens too often, but it can happen. An animal can become also for a variety of reasons. Today, even though we don't have we do have some. I can give you a few examples of animals that can pose a problem. There's halacha of meiser behema. There's a halacha of b'chor. You know that? Even in Chutz La'aretz, even with donkeys, that's the only unclean animal where there is, it belongs to the kohen. So there can be, what if they get mixed up, right? And there is an issur to do work on them. With meiser behema, you can't eat it today. You don't have a Beis Hamikdash to bring some of it where you would put it in this. You have to wait until there's a mum before you can slaughter it, a defect. What a lot of people do today, by the way, to get away with any complications of halachas, is that they buy it in partnership with a goy, and then it's butter, right?
The old days they used if they owned a cow that got pregnant with or
Sure. During the pregnancy,
they would
sell a portion, the ear. Yeah. Just to avoid, only today especially, where because of the various complications that can arise from these halachas that still are applicable, not just in Eretz Yisrael, even in Chutz La'aretz. Just that in Chutz La'aretz you don't have too many farmers. There was a pidyon bechor of a chamor in Australia not too long ago. It was a big ceremony because it's not very often. So you could have, theoretically, you could have all kinds of taaruvos of these kinds of situations. Now what do? Can you apply called the porish if you have a bunch of them? If it happens. So I guess it is possible to have this come up. And that's what the Mechaber basically says, Balichaim. He doesn't say what kind. That they're usher. There's usher for some reason. They can be usher for some reason. They got mixed up. Yeah. No, you have to make sure that Ashgacha says that they removed Trumot and Maasrot, and there's no chashash for Orla and Shevi'it. These are the main things you have to watch out for. Trumot and Maasrot, which is basically one thing, right? There's no chashash for Orla, the 3 years, and Shevi'it. Shevi'it is a sabbatical year, which applies to Israel. Orla applies here too. The only thing is that here Suffolk Orla is mutter. You go now to the marketplace and you buy apples. Maybe it's for the first 3 years. You're not allowed to eat it if it's from the first 3 years, even in Los Angeles, right? In Chutz La'aretz. But here in Chutz La'aretz, Suffolk Orla is mutter, as opposed to Eretz Yisrael. Okay, So you have to make, when you buy food from Eretz Yisrael, or fruit or vegetables or anything, no chashash of Trumot and Masrot, was hufreshu, they were removed, no chashash of orla or shevi'it. And obviously if you want to eat a falafel, you want to make sure that the guy made sure that there are no worms, tola'im, in the hummus, in the tahina, and all these things too. So when you see a teudat kashrut, hopefully the certificate covers all of these things in Israel. It means a lot more than it means here. Yeah. Then you have the other issues of bishulakum. You're going to a restaurant, who's doing the cooking? How about tvilat kelim? That's another issue. What if they don't take their kelim to the mikveh? That's not as big of a problem. There are a lot of poskim that hold that the kelim of a mikveh are exempt, and the kelim of a restaurant are exempt. It's not that you use for yourself, you use it commercially. So some do it anyways. Should you do it, not do it? It's some machloket. It's not as strict. But the kashrus of the food and the bishul akum is of course something that we need to look into. What if the store is open on Shabbos? Big problem here sometimes. It's perfect one, it's glatt. 1100, it's glatt. But is it? It's not really. There's another problem called Mesayeh bidei over avira. You're actually supporting him by buying from him. Keep the store open on Shabbat. You would do it anywhere or not is another question. So there are other issues involved, and that's why not everybody would give him a hashgacha open on Shabbos. It's a problem. Well, that's another problem. Pesach, yeah, sure. All right, real quickly, the Shach brings down that even to those who hold the Pirish Melein, we are Goizer, even those who are Machmir here, who are strict, that if the animal left on its own, we are Goizer, that's only after Niddah, after we found out, we know that there's a problem animal here. If it's before Niddah, remember the chiluk of Niddah, lo Niddah, when do we know of the problem? If the individual took before it was Niddah, for sure there shouldn't be a problem, even though it appears that the Rajba says that he may learn according to their shita, that there is a problem, because if there's a xera, there's always a xera. The majority of points can simply say that if it's before it was Niddah, there should not be a problem according to anyone. It's not shayach, in other words, to say that there should be a problem over here. Okay, just to go through the Ramah, I'm going to read it inside and then we'll see what he says. That which is osur, if you took it intentionally, that's only if some of them were taken and some of them remained behind. Then, so the Ramah, as the Meforshim here, the Noisei learn, is making an additional chiluk, that there can be a difference whether some moved and some remained, or all of them moved. Because if all of them moved away from where they were originally, we say that the kaviyas was batal. So the bigger problem is when they did not all move. If they all moved away all together, nothing was left. And then some of them moved out of the bunch. And they're mutar. So the way the Shach learns, I think everybody else learns in the Ramah, that he's saying this only b'di'evet. You still can't do this, of getting them all to move. So what he's making a chiluk is still in the b'di'evet situation. That which we said, b'miskaven. How could you have a miskaven b'di'evet? You did it intentionally, but you didn't know it was asur to do. Yeah. How could you have a miskaven b'di'evet? You did it intentionally, you did it, but you didn't know it was asur. So then, it could be, there will be a difference here. There will be a difference here. So that's the way the Shach learns, that these words which are based on the Rashba is only min b'di'evet. According to the Torah, who learns like the Rosh, that even by itself it moved out, it's asur. Then the Shach is not sure how he would learn if they all moved together. One at a time, he's machmir. But what if they all moved? Would they be mekel? It's that sort of chiyuv. Taz also agrees that if they all moved out, that there's no gzera then. he says that even lechatchila it would be mutar to scatter them all together. Because Yaakov writes the maskana that if you did it intentionally move them all together, it should be aser. But if they all moved on their own, you could be mekel and soimech and the Rashba. Shach brings down an interesting situation. What happens if they moved away and then they came back? In other words, the kvias is bottle, and somehow they regrouped and they came back. He says the kvias is gone. You don't say that there's a new kvias now. The kvias is gone. The whole din of kavua is a chidush. So once the kvias is nekar, it's uprooted, it doesn't come back. The prach is, I think, argues on this one. And the Shach also explains the Rashba that prisha befanenu, that's also because it's like he's being noitel me'akavur. That's only when some of them are left behind, because then the suffix is in mokum hakaviyas. But if there's nispazru kulam, if they're all scattered, it appears to be that just about everybody's maskim that you could then say called the porish meruba porish, because there's no more din kaviyas. The only thing is that there is one more nekuda here. Machlokes between, I don't know if it's a real machlokes, but there's apparent terminology difference in the semantics maybe between the Gra and the Rashba. Now the Rashba is a Rishon, the Gra is an Achron, but nevertheless sometimes there's a chiluk here. What creates a kira of the kaviyas? What actually does it? It's mashma from the Rosh that even if they move together, one after another, it's interesting to see migration of animals. It's an incredible thing. They go to the same spot, the migration of butterflies. Have you seen that? From North America to Mexico. Even the new generation, they just know where to go. Right? One of the miracles, man. You see the hashgacha, you see the Yad Hashem. It's an incredible thing.
Generations.
Yeah, they know where to go. And they can fly all the way. They were talking about a butterfly, basically. It doesn't have where to land, and it has to cross through the whole Gulf of Mexico. It's incredible. To see what?
Pacific growth in California. There were butterflies.
Yeah, there are various locations. This is the monarch butterfly that goes all the way down. Yeah.
Actually, they say that these roads and these guys, the next time,
Yeah.
when they travel,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
they smoke and
They know, sure, yeah. Anyways, there's a migration of birds, a migration of whales, there's migration of salmon, there's migration of many, many animals. The winter, the summer, and they all pretty much go together. Many of them go together in the same direction. So it's understood here, that's the way the Rosh learns, that even if they're going together one after another, it's not anymore kavua. So therefore, if you're porish or mafresh one from the group, it's going to be mutar. The Rashba says nispazru. He doesn't talk about going one after another, leaving. Nispazru would create a kiras akaviyas, but not if they just move together. I think that's the way the Gra learns that there's a chiluk between the Rosh and the Rashba, actually. Yeah. And it's understood. The Gra says that according to the Rosh, after they actually moved, you would be allowed to take one out lechatchila. All right, just to finish up, there's an interesting primegadim about isurim derabanan when it comes to kavua. You have 10 stores, 9 selling eggs that are kosher, and 1 selling eggs from the vineyard. Okay, no more meat, and you have a question of where you purchase the eggs from. What would you say? So this is similar to kavua, but he says here the din of kavua wouldn't really apply. The whole thing is at the rabbanan here. The whole thing is the rabbanan. Even though we do say kavua by the rabbanan, here it's not as chazak isura so much, like by taaruvos. By taaruvos, when you have one of the egg being not kosher, it's a problem. So it's chazak isura. The isur is present in the mixture, which is interesting. By meat, we say the opposite. We're machmir, we don't know where we got the meat, as opposed to the din of Taaruvot of the Basar that we're matir because of the din of bittul. Just the reason this is different is because egg, according to some shittas, that eggs are davar shebeminyan. Remember, it's one of those things that are counted. It has a certain kashivas. It may not be bottled. So if it's not bottled, it would be more of a problem with Taaruvot as opposed to, I don't know from which store I bought the eggs from. We would not be machmir. He's matir. He calls it a kavur and nikar. Masha'inkim b'taruvas. And so this would be like any ordinary Safek D'Rabbanan lekula. It's a Safek D'Rabbanan. And by Safek Kavua, I think we're lenient. The only thing is that the Ramah in Yain Nesach, in Stam Yeinam, the wine made by Goyim, he's machmer. But in Kavua, he says that there is a din of Kavua there too, even though it's only with the Rabbanan. Even though it's only with the Rabbanan, we're machmer by the din of Kavua by Stam Yeinam, if you don't know, where it came from. So apparently over there, the Ramah at least is machmer. But the Pri Megadim brings the case, the eggs, that we would not have to be strict as we are with the meat. But in the case of Taaruvos, obviously it's different. Then we would apply the halachas of Taaruvos. And whether an egg is bought or not depends on how you hold, if it's a davar shebeminyan or not. The last halacha in the Ramah also concerns eggs. So he finishes up and says like this. Rak shnayim achronim asurim, as we learned before, that when the animals moved biyachad, they did not remain their mutter, only the last two would be asur. Now he adds, if a treifa tarnegoilis, a chicken, that's treif, got mixed up with ksheres, and you found an egg, you don't know where the egg came from. Habeitza muteres, you would be able to consume the egg, afagav da tarnegoilim chashuvim and velomis batin, right? Tarnegoilim are chashuvim, they're important, and they're not bottle. Legabe beitza zlinam basaruvo. Legabe the egg, we would be able to say it probably came from the majority of them. It didn't come from the treif. It was by a beitza. We don't have to geyser. Oh, you might come for take to the kavua. No, here it's okay. You follow. In other words, we're not dealing now with the chickens. We're dealing with the egg. With the egg, we're not geyser that it came from, that you should not take it because you may come to take from the kavua. As they explain here, because we do say called the Parish Beruba Parish, even according to the Man Da'amad, the base is a davar shebeminyan, it's mutter. We're not goyzer the gavebei shema yikach mina kavua. That's the shach. So even though we are machmir by the tarnegoilim, by the chickens, we're not machmir by its eggs. Okay, I think we'll stop here. The next seif is a very interesting seif. It pays to learn it well. Talking about mixtures, that of course you have a problem with a mixture, it's not bottled, but somehow one of the pieces got eaten by mistake, or one of them fell into the ocean, or one of them got destroyed. Believe it or not, we're going to say the one that got destroyed was the one that was other. the one that got eliminated was the one that was straight. Huh?
And what about the one?
What is that?
The one that was straight?
Well, we say that was the one that was straight. No, it was the rest of the record. So that's going to be an interesting halacha to see why that works like that. Whether he ate it or other people ate it. That's the next halacha. Of course, we still have a few more halachas after that. Mitzvah Shem, we have one more Siman Kuf Yud Aleph. So Mitzvah Shem, next week we'll have 2 shiurim. And after that, I'll be gone for a couple of weeks. Mitzvah Shem. See you next week.